This conversation was sponsored by Komodo, a zero-knowledge, peer-to-peer atomic swap exchange. Learn more at komodoplatform.com. This is the thing about this debate. It always, like, once you talk about all the technicals and all the other things, it always ends up in censorship, right? So maybe we should talk about censorship and what that looks like and what that means, because there's a lot of thought around that.
I'm
right?
glad to talk about censorship. Do you support censorship, or do you support the free and open exchange of ideas on public platforms for discussion of Bitcoin?
How do you differentiate between censorship and moderation of content?
So if you're running a platform called Our Bitcoin that's presented itself to the world as a place where people can discuss Bitcoin, you should allow people to discuss Bitcoin. But instead, what this person famous did, he said, no, I'm going to delete anybody's post and manipulate the entire thing.
Well, it was because people were forking the open source code base and competing in the development team, right?
Is literally centralized, so it's not a great example of a decentralized framework.
But it presents itself to the world as an open place where people can discuss
You mean they're
Bitcoin.
materially misrepresenting something to the marketplace? Wow, there's almost a legal term that we can describe Thamos' activities as.
Agreed.
That's on Thamos. That's not on the core developers.
To me, there's a dilemma here, right?
So Greg Maxwell has openly said that he supports the censorship policy over there. Adam Back's strongest opposition.
So you call it censorship. They call it moderation. Like, we haven't resolved this philosophical question, right? Like, if you have something called Bitcoin and people start pumping their altcoins, is it on topic?
So calling it moderation is just a euphemism for censorship.
Well, this is a private company, right? So if we claim that you're censoring people on our BTC or on Bitcoin.com, you say no, it's moderation, right?
Well, no, but Juan, I think that
space,
the Reddit example is sort of fallacious because that's just Reddit being an issue, but the Bitcoin core developers have a Bitcoin improvement proposal process that allows you to say, I want to propose this as a framework to discuss improving Bitcoin on, and that's not egalitarian. You can't just say, assign me a random number, let me put my proposal forward, and let's discuss it. There's actual, quote-unquote, moderation on who gets to even have an approval, who gets to have a number, who gets to be listed, who gets to discuss improvement proposals.
There's moderation of BIP, Bitcoin improvement proposals.
Right.
Do you understand how that works? Like, can you explain us a little bit about how that moderation works?
When you have something become a BIP, that's when there's sort of general consensus it should get a number. But I can recall when we were having the scaling conversations, and then Gavin was like, well, I want to put a BIP for scaling, and someone else said, I want to put a BIP from scaling, and I had friends that were trying to give very constructive BIPs that they just got deleted from the wiki. And it was, assign them whatever number you want, assign them BIP 003924, like, it doesn't need to be numerical. But it's like I think the Reddit thing is sort of is just an aspect of censorship to voice. But when it comes to censorship to even how you can discuss and engage with the developers, that comes to like protocol level censorship.
Well, I'm sorry that your friends sort of got rejected by that process. Do you know why? Like, what was the justification for them being moderated?
And I'm sorry, I wish my memory could recall back.
Yeah, because they didn't toe the party line in regards to blockchain.
Well, no, listen. If you have a house and somebody comes to start, and you have rules, and somebody comes and violates them, you can kick them out, right? So to me, like, the censorship versus moderation debate is kind of too simplified, right?
But
there's
our
nuance
Bitcoin
here.
isn't Thamos's house. It's a platform that's presented to the world as a place where people can come discuss Bitcoin.
Our Bitcoin is a Reddit forum, and I understand that there's a frustrating piece of real estate there that we can't just take over.
So
but
can I ask you,
I mean, these are problems that are fundamental to society, and you can find these moderation versus censorship debates in every forum in the world, right?
So Juan, can I ask you, do you approve or disapprove of the moderation policy on our Bitcoin?
I think it's great that there's Bitcoin where people talk about Bitcoin, and there's our BTC where it's sort of more sort of like talk about whatever, and then there's our Ethereum, and like there's a marketplace. You can't claim censorship when you own Bitcoin.com, okay?
So I'm going to ask you again, Juan, do you approve or disapprove of the moderation policy on our Bitcoin?
All right, let me jump in here for
what about it?
Yeah, no, was anyone else in here a moderator on our Bitcoin?
No.
Anyone else in the room?
I think Jason King sure was.
Fantastic.
Okay, so our Bitcoin had specific policies that on what a post could be and what it couldn't be. And in the middle of 2014, posts just started disappearing from the queue that were not against any of the rules that we had placed in. And then after years of being moderators, moderators just started getting booted out of our Bitcoin. And then moderators that nobody knew and that are still there today that nobody knows became the majority of the moderators that were there. I was actually removed as a moderator specifically because I deleted a post that called Roger Ver a Nazi, and that was completely against the rules that we had posted. And the response that I received back to that was, well, this seemed like it was out of character for you to defend Roger. So, which is a weird statement to make anyway. So we just assumed that your account had been hacked. So thank you for your time, but you're no longer a moderator. But that's not moderation. That's censorship of an ideal.
Which, by the way, is the same narrative that they did to Gavin. If you recall, Gavin Andreessen said, I think Craig Wright is Satoshi. And they said, well, we don't know if your keys have been compromised because you said you would turn over the keys to Satoshi. So we're going to temporarily revoke access to the commit, your commit access.
Let's not even get into what Craig Wright thinks.
If we're going to continue to discuss this, we can, but it is kind of off topic from the original point. Unless we feel that...
No, this is totally on topic because this is like the heart of the debate. Like this is where people draw party lines. Is the censorship? Or this is one of the things.
So, Juan, do you approve or do you agree or disagree with the moderation policy on our Bitcoin?
I'm fascinated to learn more. So, do you tell us more about what happened? So, do you know who moderated you out or like who kicked you out?
Oh yeah, it was Thamos. Absolutely, like Thamos. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
okay.
he at least takes responsibility for doing this.
So,
Right.
Why do you think there was no Bitcoin Diamond, Bitcoin, anything that has come, Platinum? And why do you think that was not occurred before SegWit? Do you know the answer?
Yeah, because we crossed the line, right? That there was an opportunity to reach consensus, and we weren't ready to reach consensus. We didn't have the communication tools. Perhaps we didn't have the wisdom. Perhaps we lost to bad people.
I would like to correct that.
I'd like to point out also that actually consensus through censorship is no consensus at all, and that's exactly what we had in the community.
You own Bitcoin.com, dude. You own Bitcoin.com. You have your own forum. You have RBTC. You don't get to claim censorship anymore.
So you're saying that the moderation policy on our Bitcoin, you approve of it?
Our Bitcoin
yes
is a Bitcoin-specific forum, and yeah, I'm sorry that they kicked you out. I'm sorry that Thymos has taken such a hardline position. What I would have loved. Let me tell you what I would have loved to see.
He has literally selectively deleted posts to make it look like the post below it was agreeing with the exact opposite thing of what he was actually agreeing with.
I mean, so I can come up with an example. I can come up with an example of censorship in RBTC, right? And we can debate this without evidence all day. Here's the thing.
There is evidence. There's screenshots and there's logs from it. Like this isn't a hypothetical. This is an absolute fact.
No, they're moderating.
I've asked you maybe 6 or 7 times now. Do you or do you not approve of the moderation policy? I'm using your word of the moderation policy on our Bitcoin. Is it good or bad?
That's there's no way that question, you can't answer that question properly. This is the reason why people
I will
get
answer
frustrated
properly.
with
I
you,
think
right?
it's atrocious, and the entire Bitcoin community should be ashamed of the censorship that's gone on in our Bitcoin. But that's my answer.
I think he also,
let me tell you what I think.
To make it an easier statement, when he's saying should, I don't think he's using a descriptive should. I think he's using a moral should.
Okay.
Do you find it morally good, morally neutral, or morally bad?
Right.
Here's
the
what I think.
Activities that are occurring in the moderation of Bitcoin.
Here's what I think Thamos should have done. It was a big fuck up.
Do you think it's morally good or morally bad?
Let me answer the question. So, what Thamos should have done, instead of saying, okay, altcoins are bad and not Bitcoin, and if we're going to talk about Bitcoin, let's talk about Bitcoin, he should have created a third category called Bitcoin scaling debate and just let people go. And maybe that would have worked.
Juan,
right?
Are you a member of our Bitcoin in 2012, 2013?
I entered into it 2014.
Okay. How many people here were in our Bitcoin in 2013?
Like half the room for those that can't see.
Do you guys remember how amazing that community was?
It was wonderful.
Do you remember like getting up in the morning and being like, man, I cannot wait to get on there.
Wonderful things are happening today.
It's going to be like, it was going to be incredible. And like all the stuff that's still here, like the Bitcoin Wizard and HODL, all that stuff, that's all our Bitcoin. That's all back in the day. Right. Exactly. That all came from there. And then that community that we built got eroded into one of the most vitriolic, terrible places that exist on the internet. And unfortunately, because they use the word Bitcoin, the people that come to the community for the first time, it ranks high enough in Google search results. They go there and they think that that's Bitcoin, and it's a travesty, man. And it is, and like we can sit here and make arguments over it, but like that community doesn't exist. And I've recently refound it again because I've actually gotten some great Telegram groups. Like Telegram has like become this new place for us to like get in and have these conversations. But it was our Bitcoin, and it's not our Bitcoin anymore. And like I said about the people that left Bitcoin, like the people that left the good community, they're never going back there. Like that's just going to get worse.
I used to think Andreas was crazy when he said, "I'm just not going to go to our Bitcoin." And I was thinking, "Oh my God, how are you going to lose out on so much information?" And it's literally been maybe 3 or 2 years since I've even looked at that our Bitcoin, and I don't think I've missed anything.
I mean,
because
like
it's the amount of stuff that they don't have there is almost more important than the amount of stuff that they do, and I feel like I need to source information elsewhere.
And
he actually had something interesting to say about Bitcoin forks, which gets back to priorities of users versus priorities of developers.
We actually go to our Bitcoin so that we can post Roger Ver videos and get death threats.
Yeah. Okay, just to give you one, I disagree with Jason or just people who hold this opinion that, people who are gone, they're never going to come back. You know, government, we undermine. I've sat down through some of these conversations, and what I can't say publicly, obviously, because I still have NDAs which are effective for me.
We got a narc in the room.
Okay. Okay. What? So yeah, just in terms of like people who have all it would take a bunch of subpoenas to go out, and then people would start to realize, oh my goodness, I need to get out of X, whatever that X is. And then they would look for other places which would have some of the characteristics that Bitcoin does and offer. There's a reason Satoshi doesn't want to come forward. There's a reason. So there's some legal implication which are not yet well understood. And, you know, every single government agency have 7 years, if not more, before they would start to enforce some of these. And they are very careful about it. They're very methodical about it as well, but they're very understaffed as well. That's why you don't see so many things happening so quickly as well. So there's a whole bunch of context to this, and people would have perspective, you know, when people would like to come back, and I want to be responsible in terms of what I say or what I don't say. But in terms of that, there are people who have conversations all the time. And when that thing comes, whatever that is, in terms of that, people would have would look for places to go back to, or okay, which is a more. That's why integrity of how private your implementation is. You know, somebody takes idea and do a bad implementation of project, doesn't have to do anything with the bad idea, with the idea which was pretty good. It's the implementation you have to look at, which project is implementing. That's why, you know, there are projects which are very private about when they are implementing or making a claim, oh, this is a more private blockchain. You know, that is very hard. So those are conversations which are yet to occur.
Yeah, but you were talking about UASF being the
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just make a quick comment before we move on to the next topic? So just to finish off this forum problem, right? Like real estate, like branding real estate exists, right? So our Bitcoin, bitcoin.com, bitcoin.org, they exist and they're scarce and there's 3, okay? And there's some people on one side that are very frustrated, like you, very frustrated, and you guys, very frustrated with the way that Reddit has changed and the way that the moderation has happened. There's people on the other side very, very frustrated with the way that you're using Bitcoin.com. Okay, so this is a problem that it doesn't really. We don't really necessarily have a solution
with Bitcoin.com.
Well, you're using Bitcoin.com to promote Bitcoin Cash as if it's the true Bitcoin, and people that are newcomers, according to you, right? But it's a different code base. It's arguably less secure. It's got a different development team, different development strategy. It's a different thing. I mean, I'm taking this position because I'm in a position to take it, and I think it's important to bring nuance to this discussion because it is a nuanced problem. I think, you know, I resist demonizing people, and I resist idealizing people. And when I demonize somebody, I make sure I have really fucking good reasons for it.
So are you willing to morally condemn the moderation policy on our Bitcoin?
I would like to hear Thamos engage and explain his thinking. And if we, after that, if I hear that, right, and I've done some reading and I've read some of the arguments of why he did what he did back in the day when he started banning people that were forking the code base. And it's complex. It's not what you're representing. I'll tell you that much.
Let me ask you, based on what you're saying, are you saying that in your mind,
it could be justified somehow?
If based on information you've seen, it could be justified, but you're not sure, you need more information.
Well,
Is
I think
that kind of what you're saying?
we need to define censorship and moderation and figure out which one it is. Right?
It's gone to the point where he literally deletes posts selectively, so the posts below it look like they're agreeing with the exact opposite thing of what they were agreeing. So there's a fantastic post by John Block called Our Bitcoin Censorship or something like that. If you haven't read it, go read it. If anybody, any thinking person, their jaw should drop and just be stunned by the amount of manipulation and censorship and just absolutely horrible things that have gone on Our Bitcoin to manipulate the entire Bitcoin ecosystem as a whole.
What do you make of that, Jason?
I was an Our Bitcoin apologist for a long time because I was there when a lot of this stuff was happening, and I was behind the scenes, and there were a lot of good moderators that were there that were making the impassioned arguments, and then their argument just wasn't getting held. But it used to at least feel like we had a forum where we could like we could put our opinions out there as moderators, and sometimes we'd lose. And that's what happens when you're in a debate. You don't win everything. That stopped. It started being a dictatorship in terms of like what was getting up and what was getting and what wasn't being up. And then
just to talk about the debate. I was trying to have a debate on the forum before we ever had Bitcoin Cash. I've been following it since Bitcoin Classic, Bitcoin Unlimited. It's been a long-term debate. And before, you could actually talk about it on YouTube and then express those ideas, put them up on a forum and have people debate or talk about it, at least create a discussion. I got banned from Bitcoin from the Bitcoin Reddit for just putting up a video that was saying, I feel Bitcoin Cash more aligns with the ideals of the white paper for this reason. Put it up, got kicked out. Never got discussed. So, I mean, we have censorship on so many different levels. That even affects YouTube.
Okay,
well, this is
fair enough. Fair enough. 1 second, and I'll let this gentleman speak in a second too. But I'm going to just ask this out there: is there anyone who can? I don't want to say take Juangalt's position, but is there anyone who maybe has a differing opinion about the censorship issue with Reddit who wants to make a statement or ask a question?
Does anybody want to support the censorship?
I'm just doing,
right up.
I'm just doing this out of fairness. So I'm giving someone the opportunity to do that. If there is someone in the room who wants to take another position on it, anyone?
This also isn't a pro-Bitcoin. This also. No, but this also isn't a pro-Bitcoin Cash discussion at this point. It's just this is a problem. Like what I was saying before is like.
Well, I'm not saying it's a pro-Bitcoin Cash. I'm just saying, does anyone have a different position?
Right. No, but what I'm
whether
just
this is actual censorship.
What I'm just trying to identify, because I'm really trying not to gang up on Juan, is that groups identify belief systems that they have and things they're not willing to compromise on. And what's happening is that there's a group of Bitcoiners that are saying, here's something that's occurring in Bitcoin that I'm not saying what the solution is, but is a line in the sand that I'm not going to cross when it comes to an activity that I'm seeing happening in Bitcoin.
Yeah,
and that's not to say that means that discussion is pro-Bitcoin Cash as a conclusion, but that here's a line in the sand as it relates to a feature of Bitcoin that we don't want to be a part of.
Sure, that's a fair clarification, but I mean, I already understand that.
This is a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, let's post this on Our Bitcoin. I'm sure it'll be deleted.
Great. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. And that will be a testament to where it's at. So let me.
Can I see by show of hands? Who here has had their post deleted on Our Bitcoin? Right? Is there anybody? Yeah. So that's like more than half the room put their hand up here.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a discussion about multiple things, right? Free speech, as far as the freedom to engage in debate, civility, the freedom to engage in debate without being distracted out of the room, right? And where to have these discussions, the proper spaces to have these discussions, right? And these are social problems that are so large that there's a civil war brewing in the United States because those problems have not been resolved, right? You have Facebook censorship, you have YouTube censorship of political ideas, and Google is censoring. The only way that we can achieve free speech today is in the internet, and in the internet, like with your own website, and it's because we can hang our shingle and anybody can go to us and there's no middleman. It's peer-to-peer, right? And even then, Google has had enough power to remove certain domain names so that you can't get to a website and have to move somewhere else. But insert it in some extreme cases, right? So the question is, when libertarians think about property rights and etiquette rules, right? They say it's my house, my rules, and whatever, right? Well, I think free speech and civility they transcend, like as principles, they transcend private to public property. But you still have the right to do whatever you want. However, you're still violating that principle of free speech if you violate it. So I would say that
versus like rules of civility kind of thing. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Well, so you own your house, yeah, you have the right to kick anybody out. But if you kick somebody out because they said something nice that you didn't like, you're still violating the principle of civility.
Right, was that the right thing to do?
Even though it's your house, right? Yeah. And so there's clearly very strong argument to say that Our Bitcoin and Thymus and Bitcoin Talk have violated the principles of free speech, right? And then I would love to have them come and defend themselves, because free speech, I think, is fundamental to the prevention of conflict and to the resolution of conflict.
Does it
right?
bother you at all that most of the people that have been supporting the censorship or engaging in it are anonymous figures? We don't know their real names, and they're hiding behind their cloak of anonymity on the internet, whereas all the people advocating for free speech are very public figures using their real names, or the vast majority of them are anyhow?
Well, I don't know that that characterization is true, and I like that there's anonymity, because anonymity is freedom of speech. If you look at things like 4chan, where there's great kinds of trolling and horrible things, there's also incredibly pure conversations there, and it's because it is an anonymous forum. And that's one of the great things about Bitcoin, is that it's anonymous. You can do anonymous. But yeah, you have to defend yourself on the merits of the content if you're dealing with somebody that doesn't have a reputation.
But to be fair, according to your own principles, like, yes, they have the right to be anonymous, but I would say even according to your own principles, if they're going to especially say very inflammatory things or whatever, they should go ahead and out themselves, because it's sort of it lacks courage, if anything, to be anonymous, and it's more honest and transparent.
So Joey over here just submitted the link to this video.
To the live stream?
To the live stream. It was deleted within 45 seconds.
Wow. Right on.
And it's gone.
So what do you think about that, Juan?
So,
Juan,
I feel at this point.
Can I just want to recharacterize this one thing. So
there's a problem.
Demos absolutely has the right to. I mean, he's the moderator. He's following Reddit's rules he can absolutely do that.
Well, he's not even following Reddit's rules either, if you read that. Unfortunately, Reddit hasn't stepped in, but if you read the policy guidelines for moderating a sub Reddit, he's completely violating that as well.
I haven't read the TOS fully, so I will agree with that. But just even if he was, right, do you think that what has happened on our Bitcoin has been good for the cryptocurrency ecosystem as a whole, or has been bad for the cryptocurrency ecosystem as a whole?
Yeah.
Just that one thing, and it's a yes or no answer. Do you think that has been a positive or a negative effect for our ecosystem?
I think that there's better options there's better decisions he could have made, probably. But I've never administered a forum with hundreds of thousands of people.
It sounds like you're not willing to take a firm opinion.
See, the problem that I have with you is you're not listening to what I'm saying. So, like, yeah, there's two choices that they're framed here. You know, let people do whatever they want and moderate based on topic, right? I think that a third category would have been a proper solution, or potentially a proper solution. But yeah, I think that where we're at today is not in a community that has a proper space, perhaps, to have these conversations, right? Maybe there are some spaces, right? And we need it, and we need better communication. We need a place where we can have these discussions. So yeah, the results have been
suboptimal,
negative.
Yeah,
we would love to first to have a solution to this problem, but it needs to be nuanced, right? Like, if we just they've been taken over and bad, right? And then we don't get anywhere anyways.
But and here's the thing. I mean, go ahead and see what you're going to say, but let's maybe try to wrap this up, because I feel like we're belaboring the point. But there's been a lot of good things, or valid arguments and evidence and stuff that's been said. I think kind of people get the sense for what is going on in our Bitcoin. So either let's wrap it up pretty soon in the next 5 minutes, or if there's other topics related to what we've been talking about to address, we can do that too to wrap it up. So.
Well, I was just going to say that this comes down to when we were discussing, and you said, well, that's a people problem. And I think that like when you don't address people problems, you get schisms. And I think that the definition of a people problem is that, I wish that there could just be an Excel sheet with all of the core contributors to Bitcoin Core that self-identify as such, to say, was SegWit a hard fork or a soft fork? And like that alone will just, like, if we could just get a running tally of that, will tell you the difference between the understandings of what fully encapsulates Bitcoin as a community. Because it's so funny that we're talking about $100 billion project forking into like 7 different projects, and what we're talking about is a subreddit, not anything to do with the code.
Social consensus is important.
Right, and I actually think that something that I find scary, and I hope to God won't happen, but I have a feeling is that emergent consensus on the ability to change what the laws of that world is called. When you have 300 million people, those are called congressmen, right?
Oh yeah.
So everyone's like, well, why? If only we can get rid of the politics, people could let me make the changes to the Constitution that I see fit. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I functionally think that when Bitcoin has 300 million users, core developers are going to be exactly like the legal people who contribute code to that.
Well,
and they're all going to be politicians.
Yeah, let's add another principle to the ones we mentioned before, scarce supply. right? Let's just not move that line. And I know there's people that are talking about why you should move that line. I haven't really heard the argument pro moving it, but that's going to be the next one of the bigger sort of battlefronts, assuming that privacy gets some degree solved by Lightning Network and onion routing, maybe other technology. The next battle is going to be the total supply, like the scarce supply.
I think that fungibility is a far greater argument than people give it credit, because I don't think Coinbase will ever allow a Mimblewimble based Bitcoin to ever be transacted in their network. They close accounts after you withdrawn your money because of all the basis of what they do weeks after you withdrawn it. Like the level of ability that Coinbase is able to have with regulators because of the total lack of anonymity in Bitcoin is something that, like, I think that when we actually have Bitcoin have anonymity, you will realize that you have enemies you never realized you had.
Yeah, if you wanted to destroy Bitcoin, you couldn't have been more effective than what's happened in the last couple of years. You've shattered the community into 1,000 different subgroups. You've imposed censorship. Like, if you wanted to destroy it, you couldn't have been more successful than what's been accomplished over the last year or two.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe, but maybe that's just where we're at, right? Like, maybe that's just the psychology of people today, right? Like, there is, like, as we were saying, you know, there's chaos in the freedom, right? So you fork the Bible and then you have 10,000 interpretations, right? Like, that's what happens to some degree, right? So the question is, how do we engage? How do we reach consensus? And where do we reach consensus? And maybe we need to start reframing and rethinking and rebranding Bitcoin, our Bitcoin and Bitcoin.talk as Bitcoin promotion environments, right? They're not the truth about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency environments. They're Bitcoin promotion environments. Perhaps that's what they are, right? And that's fine. And the conversations maybe are happening now at conferences, and maybe they're happening in Telegram. Maybe we need to have another option, right? I don't know. Since I started Komodo, in Komodo, which was like 4 years ago, the vision may have evolved actually beyond what I had realized it had evolved. We humans, and we mortal humans in the Dash community are basically helping the gears that move it, that we can fall away and this thing will continue. The chaos that has happened and how to grow, right? I think that was within the libertarian movement, within the people in already, and it manifested in the